A teenage girl named Nicole is getting ready for school when her father Steven comments that her dress is a little skimpy. Nicole argues about giving her a little freedom to do what she wants, and she leaves angrily. Steven's new wife Laura asks if he already bought the tickets for James Taylor's concert, and Steven says he will get them today. His stepson Toby joins in for breakfast, and he asks Steven to drop him off at school using his Mustang. Nicole meets with her friends after school, and the three of them head to a pub. There, the teenage girl notices the handsome guy named David, and she instantly has a crush on him. Her friend Margot sees a post about a rave party tomorrow, and she asks Nicole to come with her. However, Nicole turns it down because she has to go to the James Taylor concert with her family. She sees that David read the post, and perhaps he is coming to the party too. David catches her staring at him, and Nicole smiles before leaving. The next day, Nicole asks her father if it's okay not to come with them at the concert, but Steven assures her that she will have fun bonding with him and their new family. However, Steven later receives a call, urging him to fly to Vancouver for a very important meeting. He tells the unfortunate news to his family that he has to cancel their plan. This upsets Nicole, and she immediately calls Margot, saying that she will go with her at the rave party. That evening at the bar, Margot sees her crush, which is a middle-aged dude. She wants to say hi to him, but Nicole says she will just stay behind. Left alone, Nicole is approached by her crush David, and he seems to be a guy of few words. They are just staring at each other when suddenly, a fight breaks out. David takes Nicole and they rush out of the bar. He then drives her to a park where they spend the night talking about their families. Nicole says that it is almost time for her curfew, but David adjusts her watch and says they got all the time in the world. They share a passionate kiss, but before things could escalate, Nicole holds back. Steven arrives the next day, and he reprimands his daughter for going home late last night. He says that he wants to meet the guy, but Nicole is not sure if she's gonna see him again. As punishment, Steven gives her yard and kitchen duty for 2 weeks. Laura tells Steven that he needs to be stricter with his daughter if he wants her to respect him. The husband is resistant to her nagging, but then Laura warns that him being too easy on Nicole will soon blow up in his face. After school, Nicole sees David waiting for her in his car. David brings her to the pub where he teaches her how to play pool. As they head home after their date, David tells Nicole that he wants to meet her family, to which she agrees. The next day, Nicole introduces David to her father. His daughter's boyfriend seems to be a nice guy, but Steven does not buy it. Laura tells Nicole that they need to plant trees as part of her yard duty, and David volunteers to do it instead. The stepmother is impressed with his knowledge of trees, and the family is totally charmed by him, except Steven. He is seeing some red flags as David casually orders Nicole to get a Coke.
Get me a Coke.
And as they leave, the father sees him grabbing his daughter inappropriately. Despite this, Steven stays lenient. Nicole spends the entire day with her boyfriend, and as David's inappropriate touch becomes more frequent, she finds herself becoming too comfortable with it. The next day, Steven has to go to Vancouver again, and this time, Laura also goes with him. Before leaving, he reminds his daughter not to bring anyone into the house, and Nicole agrees. However, that evening, she calls her boyfriend who is in the car with his goon-looking friends. Nicole invites him to her house, saying that her parents are out of town for a couple of days. David says he will probably arrive late, so Nicole gives him the door passcode in case she is already asleep by then. David later arrives and finds Nicole sleeping alone in her room. He wakes her up, and the two become steamy until they finally did it. The next day at school, Nicole tells Gary that she is very much in love with David. They hug to bid farewell, and when the jealous boyfriend sees this, he immediately runs to Gary and beat him. Nicole tries to stop him, but David accidentally hits her. He didn't stop beating Gary until Nicole shouts, asking him to leave. The next day, Nicole finds out that she caught a black eye from yesterday. Laura sees this, and the teenage girl says it was from a volleyball accident. At school, David sees Nicole talking with Gary again, but he decides not to approach them this time. He leaves a note in Nicole's locker, apologizing and asking her to meet after class. David waited for hours at the pub, but Nicole never showed up. David spent the day preoccupied. His fellow says they need to leave for an undisclosed gig, but the heartbroken loverboy says he will just stay. He tries reaching out to Nicole, even sending her a gift, but she just throws it out without opening. That night, the couple hears her crying, and Laura goes to comfort her. Nicole tells her what David did to Gary, and Steven, who is just listening, comes in and asks if it was him who gave her a black eye. Nicole denies it, and Laura asks him to just leave. Before heading out, Steven finds an open wrapper of contraceptive. The lenient father tries to be firm on telling his daughter to stop seeing David because he is not a good guy. However, Nicole says it has nothing to do with him because it is her life. Steven leaves without saying another word. Nicole tells Margot about David accidentally hitting her, and her toxic friend tells her not to make a big deal of it. The boys suddenly appear and start partying with Margot. Nicole tries to leave as soon as she sees David, but the lover boy manages to talk to her. He explains that he just wanted to protect her, and his persuasion succeeds as Nicole finally accepts his apology. One day, Steven arrives home and finds David having fun with Nicole and Laura. He asks his wife why David is there, and Laura says it is better than Nicole sneaking off to see him. David further teases Steven as he kisses his daughter in front of him. Steven runs a background check on David and tells Laura what he learned. The guy is an orphan, bouncing through different foster homes until he got kicked out when he was 18. Laura says there's nothing wrong with it, but Steven says he does not trust David with his daughter. Later that day, he meets with David and tells him to stop seeing his daughter. David insults him about his inadequacies as a father, and Steven warns that something bad will happen to him if he shows up again to his family. That evening, Nicole confronts Steven for beating up his boyfriend. It turns out that the psychopath David hurt himself so he can blame his bruises to Steven. The teenage girl says she lost respect on her father and then leaves to run away with David.
Nicole!
Steven calls the police, but they wouldn't consider it kidnapping because it was her daughter who ran away with her boyfriend. David takes the rebellious daughter back to the park where they become intimate again. As they head home, David invites her to his place, but Nicole refuses to. However, after her boyfriend left, Nicole changes her mind and decides to go to David's. There she finds her friend Margot taking an illegal substance. Moments later, the stoned David grabs Margot inappropriately and takes her to his room. Devastated, Nicole returns home and finds her worried sick father sleeping on the couch. The next day, Steven sees a note on the door from Nicole, apologizing and saying that what she has with David is over. He tries to talk to her, but his daughter says she wants to be alone and does not want to talk about it. During lunch, Gary tells Nicole that Margot is absent because she is sick. Suddenly, David appears and tries to surprise his girlfriend. However, Nicole wants to avoid him, and as the psycho tries to grab her, she screams loudly. Gary intervenes, telling David to let Nicole go, and so the boyfriend complies. That evening, Margot pays Nicole a visit to her house. Despite Nicole's attempts to ignore her, Margot insists on knowing what's going on. That's when Nicole confronts Margot about what happened at David's place. Margot claims that she didn't consent to what happened and accuses David of taking advantage of her. However, Nicole refuses to believe her and dismisses her pleas. As Margot leaves, David follows and intercepts her car, forcing her to stop at the roadside. He then forcibly removes her from the vehicle and threatens her, demanding that she rectify the situation between him and Nicole. After this confrontation, David leaves Margot distraught. Later that evening, David shows up at Nicole's house and tries to explain himself to her father. However, Steven refuses to listen to David's explanations and firmly states that he will protect Nicole from him. He shuts the door on David, and when he left, Nicole thanks her dad for driving away her ex. At school, Nicole thanks Gary for standing up for her yesterday, and the jealous ex is just watching as Nicole hugs her friend. Later that day, Gary walks home when David suddenly appears. The psycho tells him that he got transferred from different mental institutions because he is too violent. Gary runs away, but David managed to catch and beat him to death. David later follows Nicole and her family in the mall. When Nicole heads to the ladies' room, David follows her and he threatens his ex, telling her that she only belongs to him. When another woman comes in, David quickly leaves. Meanwhile, Steven finishes work and heads to the parking lot, only to find his car destroyed with a note implicating David. Quickly, he borrows a friend's car and calls Margot to ask where David lives, fearing that the psycho may have taken his daughter. He breaks into the address, but it is empty. There, Steven finds his family photo with David's face crudely pasted over his own. He also finds his daughter's underwear, and it enrages Steven, prompting him to destroy everything. David and his men later return to find their house in complete disarray, with many of their valuables damaged or destroyed. They vow to kill whoever did it, and David says that he knows the culprit. They get ready to go to Steven's house, but David reminds the boys to leave Nicole out of it. Meanwhile, Margot shows up at Nicole's house sobbing. She tells them the gruesome news about Gary who was beaten to death and left in the woods. While Steven is calling the police, Toby tries to call their dog, only to find its severed head tossed through the pet door. Steven tries to tell the police, but the telephone line has been cut off. Laura is confident that they could not get in because their reinforced door has passcode. However, Nicole remembers that she gave David the code, so Steven hurries to the door and locks the deadbolt before the psycho could get in.
So let me the house!
The goons start banging through the windows and Steven orders everyone to turn off the lights and hide upstairs. They try to secure the house as best as they can and manage to injure some of the men who are trying to get in. Nicole comes up with an idea, and moments later, the neighborhood guard Larry notices the blinking lights from Steven's house. He tries to call them, and when he finds out that their line was cut, he decides to go check on them. Upon arriving, Larry sees David and arrests him. Another thug attempts to sneak up, but the guard managed to dodge his attack, leaving both assailants cornered. Steven shows up and punches the two. However, Larry got shot down, and now, the goons use Steven as hostage to let themselves in. Meanwhile, Toby sneaks out to use the phone in his mom's car and call 911. One of the men sees him, and as he tries to shoot the kid, Toby turns on the car and runs him over. David carries Steven to his daughter's room. Upon seeing that one of his men is assaulting Nicole, David puts a bullet through his head. He then threatens to shoot her father if Nicole doesn't come with him. In the meantime, Toby sees his handcuffed mom, so he goes to the dead security guard to take the key and free Laura. David is busy trying to convince Nicole to come with him, and he didn't notice Laura unlocking Steven's handcuffs. However, David quickly knocks him out, and as he is about to shoot him dead, Nicole takes a sharp cane and stabs her psychopath ex-boyfriend. A fight ensues between him and Steven, until the protective father managed to throw him out of the window. The distraught daughter hugs Steven as the horror brought by David and his men is finally over. Did you like our movie recap? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. To be updated for new movie recaps, hit the notification bell.